Greetings, social media land. This is Ted Victor, founder of the Broad Social Network. Today is Monday, June 8th at approximately 3 p.m. And we are here with Mr. Raymond Hicks. The last time we had a conversation with Mr. Raymond Hicks was on May the 30th to have the very important conversation about police corruption and police brutality. Now we are here to conclude that conversation, or to have the second part of that conversation, to understand where are we today in America, considering that we are at a moment of protest. We are having manifestations on the street in response to George Floyd and many other victims of police brutality and police corruption throughout the country and throughout the world. Good afternoon, Mr. Raymond Hicks. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Ted. As always, thank you so much, South Route Network, for affording me an opportunity to be here again a second time, to address some of the concerns that, my family and I, we've gone through, and some of the things that you see going on throughout the world now.
Yes, sir. So let's see if we can pick up where we left off regarding the situation that you went through. There are probably some people who unfortunately did not hear your story. Can you please give us a quick synopsis as to what your experience was with the Broward Police Department or the Broward Sheriff's Office a couple of years back?
Yes, I actually started working in law enforcement back in 1986. I was always fascinated with law enforcement, and I always said as a young kid, around about 7 years of age, when there was totally chaos in my home, where there was stabbing, cutting, my mom was shot, my dad went to prison. I said that if I didn't play professional football, I would go into law enforcement. And of course, I joined the Broward Sheriff's Office 11/17/1986, working as a detention officer. I later went on through the Crossover Academy in 1996. And when I began to go out and work narcotics, work with Drug Task Force, OCD, which is organized crime in the cradle within 1,000 feet of a school, 3 years in the state penitentiary, that became my dilemma. And of course, I watched these individuals plant drugs on black offenders and beat them to the ground and take money. And as a result of it, I said something about it. I told them that it was morally wrong and totally unethical. And lo and behold, I was told that I could not work out on the streets anymore, working narcotics. And they placed me back in the jail. I worked on the 6th floor. And when I arrived there, things just intensified, where I never forget it. On June 15, 2000, I went to work that day, and I came home and I took a nap for about maybe a couple hours, 2 hours and about 30 minutes. I got up to go work out in the backyard. A friend of mine, and of course, I looked across the street, and there was either the Drug Task Force or the SWAT team mounted up at the Citgo at the gas station. And when they saw me, they all jumped in their vehicles and they sped down the back street. So I told my friend I was getting ready to work out with, I said, let me just go to the front of my yard and see, where they're going. And of course, all these over about 60-some cops stormed my home at gunpoint in front of me and my kids. My wife had gone to Winn-Dixie. So my kids were there screaming and yelling, at all of us at gunpoint. And one of the gentlemen by the name of Ricky Clark, he put his hands on my shoulder and assured me that everything was going to be okay. And of course, by me knowing him, I asked him, I said, what are you guys here for? And he said, we got a warrant for your arrest. They never showed me a warrant showing that, for them to search my home, nor did they show me a warrant saying that what it was for. So I kept asking the question, why are you guys here? We got a warrant for your arrest. I said, for what? They said, we can't discuss it. I said, what do you mean you can't discuss it? You're here at my home and you can't discuss it? So there was a gentleman by the name of Dave Robshaw from Internal Affairs. He came and said, Ray, do you have any guns in the house? I said, yes, I have guns in my house. They belong to me. He said, where's your credentials? I said, my credentials are actually inside the house. So I said, you want me to go get them? He said, no, you don't have to go get them. We'll go get them. They tear up my home, and make this big fuss. The community and everybody else is looking on, as I'm being totally embarrassed. And of course, he said, we're going to suspend you pending the outcome of this case. And lo and behold, they placed me in the backseat of a cruiser and transported me over to District 5. And when I arrived there, I kept asking the question, why am I here? What are the charges? Nobody still wouldn't say anything. A couple hours later, they ported me over to the city jail. When I arrived at the city jail, I kept asking the question, what are you guys booking me in for, and why am I here? No one still said anything. I said, okay, well, can I speak to a lawyer? They wouldn't even give me an opportunity to talk to a lawyer. So the next morning, the marshal arrived. And I said, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. I said, what are the marshals doing here? So they said, well, Ray, we're here to take you to court. So they handcuffed me and shackled me, and they transported me to court, in federal court. So I get downtown to the federal detention center. My wife and my mom were sitting there in the courtroom, and the prosecutor said that when Mr. Hicks is at work, he's in the top 10% of his department. But when he's not at work, he's into other curricular activity. So I'm looking at my mom and wife like, what are these women talking about, man? Granted, I was a highly decorated officer. I was a Gold Cross recipient, I was a Silver Cross recipient, and I was 2-time Deputy of the Month. I've never been in trouble in my entire life. So the prosecutor said that I went to various states to live in 350 kilograms of cocaine that was equivalent to $750 million.
Please continue.
So the judge said, well, you're a menace to society. She said, you're not a flight risk because you don't have a passport. And she said, I'm going to detain you and depending on the outcome of this case.
So now, let me just make sure for the public to know this, because right now, everywhere around the world, we are having an understanding of police brutality and police corruption. You had never been in problems with the law before that date?
Never.
You've never even been arrested, in trouble, no history whatsoever, problems with the law?
Never.
Okay. All right, please continue, because I have quite a few questions. It seems as though even if you were to follow the rules in society, it seems as though you can wind up getting in trouble, and we want to avoid that happening again, and we definitely want to avoid that for our children, for the next generation. So please continue with your story.
So of course the judge actually ordered for me to be detained at the federal detention center in Miami. So as the marshal was taking me back to the holding cell, there was 5 other guys that was arrested along with me. And when we got to the holding cell, I was getting ready to swing on every last one of them. I said, man, what the freak you guys said to these people to have me here? And they said, man, you're wrong, Hicks. We haven't said anything to these people for you to be here. You need to talk to your department. So later on that afternoon, the marshals came and transported me to the federal detention center in Miami. And when I arrived there, Mr. Ted, they treated me like I was the lowest scum on the face of this earth. When they strip searched me, there's a certain way that you strip search an inmate. And the way that they treated me, it was totally inhumane. Basically formulated an opinion about the fact that I was a deputy sheriff, and there I was, an inmate faced with natural life imprisonment. So, anyone that works in law enforcement knows that there's a certain way that you strip search an inmate. You make that person take off all their clothes. You make them run their fingers through their hair if they have hair. You make them lift up their tongue to see if they're concealing anything under their tongue. You make them turn around, bend at the waist, open their butt cheek, and cough to see if they're concealing anything inside the anal. Of course, you make them raise both feet, and then you have them turn back around, and they have to lift their testicles, so you can see if they have anything concealed up under their testicles. And at that point, you make them put their clothes back on. But I can tell you the way that they treated me was just actually inhumane. And later they came to me and they gave me an orange jumper, and they said, we're going to put you up in the shoe. So when they took me up and put me in the shoe on the 13th floor at the federal detention center in Miami, they put me in a hole. I was in a hole for 5 months, total darkness, 23 hours a day, 1 hour a day for recreation. And while I was there in the hole, the officer began to just ridicule me. You that effing cop, you that cricket cop. I hope you gone for the rest of your life. I said, man, I'm innocent. I've never been in trouble in my entire life. I was a highly decorated officer. They said, yeah, that's what they all say. I said, well, one thing is for sure. I don't know what they all say, but I'm telling you what I said. I'm telling you what I'm saying. So, you know, it got to a point where the only way that I could go to sleep, Mr. Ted, was to do 1,000 to 1,500 push-ups every other day, because I was conditioning my mind, conditioning my body, because I knew at some point these people was going to want to fight with me, you know. And so I got to a point where I saw I pushed an emergency button inside the cell, because at this point, you know, I'm saying to them, you guys are treating me inhumane, you know. When you're in isolation, you know, it seems like the walls are caving in on you when you're in there for quite a period of time, you know, where it's almost like you can reach out and touch each wall with your arms, you know. And so there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Fernandez. He came to me and I said, sir, I have not spoken to my wife and kids. Can you give me an opportunity to talk to my family? So he said, yes. He pulled me out. He said, why are you threatening my staff? I said, sir, I'm not threatening your staff. Your staff is threatening me every single day. I said, but I haven't done anything wrong. And he gave me a phone. I called my wife and spoke to my wife and kids. I don't even know how to describe to you how emotional that phone call was. You know, to listen to my wife and to say how they paraded my picture over the newscast, saying that I was a kingpin and I was a murderer. I was giving confidential law enforcement information. I was going to various states delivering 350 kilograms of coke that was equivalent to $750 million. Mr. Ted, they had no drugs, no money. It was all based on fabrication. So they later, after that phone call, Mr. Fernandez says, well, the only way you can make contact with your family is to put you down in general population. And of course, they put me down in GP. When you take an officer and you put him in general population, it's a death threat to that cop. And lo and behold, when I walked in the unit, I'll never forget it. When I walked in 7 West, there's a lower tier and there's an upper tier. There was 122 inmates. And one of the guys out of Dade County, he said, oh, you that effing cop. I said, effing cop? I said, dude, you got a problem with me? He said, yeah, I got a problem with you. I said, if you got a problem with me, we could go ahead and handle it like men. So one of the guys that knew me from the streets, he told me, say his name was Maurice. We call him Blind. And Maurice said, Ray, he said, listen, man, he said, you know, don't fight with this dude. He said, man, you don't know who you playing with. He said, he come from where we come from. He gonna thump. So to make a long story short, Mr. Victor, you know, we agreed to go in the room. You know, I went to go in and put my bedroll down. When I went to go put my bedroll down, there he was standing in the door. So all the inmates gathered up around the door and said, what's going on in there, man? You running your mouth. He was about 6'4", 270. I was 6'1", 290. And Mr. Ted, I literally tried to beat him to death. Yeah, I literally tried to kill him. I beat him so bad that, you know, everybody stormed in there and they was like, big homie, big homie. They started calling me big homie after this, you know, because I literally tried to put my fist through his brain, you know, to let him know, listen, I don't know who you think you're playing with, but I'm not that kind of person, dude, you know. And after that, I began to question God and say, Lord, why me? And God said, why not you? And he said, I need a good shepherd to go get my sheep and bring them unto me. And when all revenues has been exhausted, that's when I begin to manifest myself. And of course, I began to fast and pray for 3 days and 3 nights. I ate no food, I drank no water. And I read Matthew, the 6th chapter, the 15th verse, where it says, fasting is to only be seen by thy heavenly Father. And when you fast, do not walk around with a sad continuance on your face to appear to man that you're fasting, because your reward has already been given to you. And I fast like that because I begin to think about how Jonah was, you know, thrown into the ocean, you know, and whoever knows the story from the Bible and how he prayed and he fasted and he asked God to spit it back out of society. And that's what I was doing. And of course, I began to walk around. I brought forth the word so powerful in there, you know, saying chapel iglesia, getting all the brothers up morning, noon, and night. We were going to church. And, you know, God began to just use me, and I began to write case law for other individuals, you know, who was forced a plea bargain to avoid facing increasingly hard sentences. So I look up and I thank God for that particular situation. And just to show you, Mr. Ted, you know, the same person that I exemplified out here as a deputy sheriff for the Broward Sheriff Office is the same person that I lived by while I was there as an inmate incarcerated. Anyone that knows me will tell you, I give you the shirt off my back. But if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you're right. And as a matter of fact, while I was there, this document right here from the Federal Detention Center in Miami, right here, it shows where I won a life-saving award. I saved the life of another individual inmate that was actually incarcerated. The officer walked out of the unit and he left the unit unattended. And this gentleman who was shot in the head many years ago had a seizure and he swallowed his tongue. So all the other inmates went to calling for me. So I ran out on the rec yard where he was, and I was able to help revise it. So I won a life-saving award from the warden of the institution. As you can see, right here. So because of the fact that I'm saying, this is crazy that I'm sitting here for something that I didn't do. And I can only tell you, Mr. Ted, my wife and my kids suffered immensely. My wife was calling me. She was saying, Raymond, they're getting ready to foreclosure on the house. Raymond, they're getting ready to repossess the cars. Raymond, I can't feed the kids. I went to Winn-Dixie and we're scraping up nickels, quarters, dimes, and pennies just to put food on the table. Mr. Victor, one thing is for sure about me, sir. I'm not going to lie. As you can see right here, the eviction. This is the eviction. The house that we built in 1995, we was given 24 hours to get out the door. I had to give away all my furniture, our cars repossessed, all the finance was taken, but by the grace of God, I'm still standing. And I began to pray and I said, Lord, why am I going through this situation? But Mr. Ted, it's unbelievable. But anyway, going back to me being incarcerated, they came to me after 11 and a half months. And they said, Mr. Hicks, we're going to give you 16 and a half months. You've been down for 11 and a half months. You'll do 3 more months and go home. I said, no, I'd rather take life imprisonment. So the court-appointed attorney that they gave me, Marty Fagenbaum, he said, Ray, on a manuscript, write down everything that happened because this could possibly be a bestseller book, maybe a movie. And I took his advice and I began to write down everything that I was experiencing, everything that I saw. I went back from the time that I grew up, from what I can remember, and I just began to just write. And he took me back to court and he says, Your Honor, I don't want nothing else to do with this case. He said, Mr. Hicks, what was done to you, somebody could go to jail as it relates to what they did to you. And he said, I don't want nothing else to do with this case, and he got off the case. So they gave me another court-appointed attorney. He came in, Mr. Ruben Garcia. He said, Mr. Hicks, you're faced with natural life imprisonment without possible parole. And it would behoove you, to take the 16 and a half months, so you can go home and support your family. So him and I, we got into an argument. I told him, I said, man, who the freak? Well, I said, what the freak you just said, dude? I said, don't you ever approach me like that again, man. Don't you ever tell me to take time for something that I didn't do. I stand up for justice. I said, I'm willing to lose my life because I haven't done anything wrong, and just a repercussion of me speaking out against police brutality, corruption, plant drugs, beating young black offenders to the ground and taking money. And there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Rick Diaz. Mr. Rick Diaz is an attorney. He said, if I never seen an innocent man, you wanted them and you shouldn't be here. So now Mr. Ruben Garcia had a change of heart. So he said, Ray, I don't want nothing else to do with your case. I want to just get off this case. And so, of course, he took me back to court and he told the judge, he said, I'm withdrawing from the case. So I told my wife, I said, do whatever you have to do, Trees, to get somebody to represent me. I said, because I'm not going to take time for something that I didn't do. So my wife went through her thrift savings and she took out $30,000. I think it was either between $15,000 and $30,000. And she gave it to a lawyer by the name of Michael Bloom. Michael Bloom was a former prosecutor for the feds, and he never lost a case in 15 years. And Mr. Michael Bloom, when he took on the case, he went to go see my mother up in Vero Beach. And he said, Miss Hicks, he said, that son right there, he's not a drug dealer. And she said, I know he's not a drug dealer. She said, I told these people that I put my head up on a chopping block. They can take my head off if they can show me that that son committed the crimes that they accuse him of. He said, I already know that man there is not a drug dealer. He said, I know a drug dealer when I see one. So when he came to visit me, he said, Mr. Hicks, I'm your new attorney. And he said, you're an innocent man and you shouldn't be here. And I'm gonna do everything within my power to get you back out there with your family. And Mr. Ted, I just broke down at that point, because Isaiah 54:17 say, no weapon that forms against me shall prosper. And every tongue that come up against me in judgment shall be brought to shame and condemned. And I look up and I thank God every day, because I knew he was heavenly sent. And he said, Ray, I'm gonna get you out of here. I'm ready to go to trial. And that's what I wanted to hear. So we go to trial on September 26th of 01 before a 12-panel jury in federal court. The chief judge, Norman C. Rucker.
This is in Broward County?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Fort Lauderdale?
Yes, sir.
Okay, continue.
So the chief judge, Judge Norman C. Rucker, he says, well, what are drugs involved in this case? The DA said, we have no drugs. He said, where are the money? She said, we have no money. He said, well, why would you bring this man in my courtroom saying he committed these crimes and you have nothing to substantiate the charges? So he says, so he slammed the gavel and he said, sidebar. So when he called for the sidebar, he said, well, I hope that I could hear him, because I was sitting at the table not too far from him. He said, for impeachment purposes, whatever y'all brought this man in here for, you better come back in with the same information, because why is he here? So then they came back and went on the record, and they said that I was given confidential law enforcement information, FCIC, NCIC. Mr. Ted, that's ran through your social security number. So Mr. Michael Bloom subpoenaed a communication operator. Her name is Kathy Munaz. She said, I worked in this capacity for 25 years. Mr. Hicks has not ran this information. And she went on to say that you got to go to BCC. You got to take a 40-hour course out there. There's a certificate of completion from FDLE, and you have to use your social security number in order to run it. She said he has never ran this information. Then they lied and said I was on audio tape. So when they played the tape for the jury and the judge, they found out that it wasn't my voice on the tape, but it was the same deputy who arrested me, Deputy Bernard Brown. And when Internal Affairs, who was there listening in on court, Richard Pasanti and Joseph Fitzpatrick, Sergeant Joseph Fitzpatrick, they ran out of the courtroom. So when they played the tape for the jury and the judge, they found out that it wasn't my voice, but in fact, it was his voice. And he was the one that arrested me and transported me to the district, to District 5. All of these individuals promoted to a higher rank and still work at the Broward Sheriff Office to this day, except for the ones that's retired now. Bernard Brown was promoted to a detective.
How many of them are there?
Joe Damiano, Detective Tom Brent, Bernard Brown, William Kineen, Richard Pasanti. There have to be at least, I have all their names, Mr. Ted. Ricky Clark. I could just go on with the list.
So where are we now? This is 2020, and obviously you were released. When you were released, when did that happen, and how did that happen?
On September 26th of 01, the jury deliberated, and the judge asked the jury, if they reached the verdict. And the trial started August 27th of 01. And September 26th of 01 is when the jury basically said, yes, Your Honor, we reached the verdict. And they had to call out each one of our names. And they said, as it relates to Raymond Hicks, we find the defendant not guilty. And my prayers to the Lord was that God spit me back out of society. And here I am today, So they came back within 30 minutes with a not guilty verdict. And they said they could have come back within 10 minutes. So I come home, and it was just a enjoyable moment, just to be there with my wife and my kids. And it just seems like so funny, so strange, And what people don't realize, Mr. Ted, is when you go through a situation, what I'm describing to you all right now, it's not easy, man. It's gonna take, I don't care how strong you are, it's gonna take a relationship with God in order to get you through a situation that I'm describing to you all right now. Because to go through the turmoil for no apparent reason, only because what I believed in is what you see going on out here in society today, is just unbelievable. So I get home, and of course I'm there with my wife and my kids. And on January 6th of 2004, the Broward Sheriff's Office stormed my home a second time. 60-some cops stormed my home a second time.
After you were released?
After I was released.
Okay, why this time?
They said I was shooting at someone in my backyard. But at the time of the last shooting, my wife and I, we were in court. I was in Judge Holmes' courtroom. So I said, how could I be the shooter and my wife and I just coming out of court? So they told me, shut your effing mouth. We'll blow your effing brains out. I said, if you're going to blow my effing brains out, get the blowing. I said, because I'm not going to shut my effing mouth. And I told one of the guys, I said, you better not put your hands on me, man. So my neighbor, Lisa Jackson, who worked for the sheriff department, she came across the street and she said, Raymond, don't do this, man. I said, listen, I'm not doing anything. So my neighbor, Bernard McCorms, he was a sergeant with the Broward Sheriff's Office, and he came down the street and he said, wait a minute, I just saw Ray and Patrice in the elevator at the courthouse. So how could he be the shooter? So I asked him, I said, well, if I'm the shooter, then where's the victim? So I told my wife, I said, Treese, I said, go show him. So 6 hours I'm handcuffed in my backyard. And I told my wife, I said, go show, there was a white guy showed up in my yard, must have been a lieutenant or captain. So I said, go show him the documents, show him we were in court. So my wife presented the documents to him, Mr. Ted, and within seconds, they dissipated. But granted, they went in my home, they searched my home, and I asked him, I said, where the victim? No victim. I said, do a ballistic test. Where the bullet casing? So when the gentlemen read the documents showing that we were in court, within seconds, they dissipated. They were all gone. So they later charged me through the mail saying that I discharged the firearm. So I take this case to trial in court in front of Judge Stephen DeLuca in Deerfield. And Judge DeLuca said, where the victim? They said, the state said, we have no victim. He said, did you do a ballistic test? They said, no. He said, where the bullet casing? They said, well, we don't have any. He said, well, I got documents showing this man was in court. So how could he be at his home and shooting at somebody? So within 10, he said, well, we're going to trial within the next 10 minutes. So the prosecutor asked for a continuance, and he says continuance is denied. We're going to proceed to trial. So within 10 minutes, I was tried by the courts, and I was acquitted by the judge. So I began to fast and pray, as I always do now, and I got a job working with underprivileged, troubled, underprivileged young kids in boot camp.
But wait, one step at a time. Aren't you able to countersue? Aren't you able to respond to these false allegations? Did you do that?
I filed a lawsuit, Mr. Ted, for malicious prosecution, false arrest, imprisonment, a violation of my Constitution, civil rights, supervision, retention, destruction of evidence. And lo and behold, the same judge who was actually directly involved in my criminal case, who signed off on a wiretap, a pen register, he wound up with my civil case. The detective who presented the documents to him to sign off on a pen register, he was directly involved in my criminal case, and he wound up with my civil case. So I asked my attorney, Bruce Little, I said, how could they do this? And he says, well, Ray, they can do it. They do it all the time. So there was an attorney who basically said to me, Ray, I'm going to call your lawyer and tell him that this judge who presided over your case, he shouldn't have no involvement with this case, and he should recuse himself because he was directly involved in the criminal case. And also, his brother was a major at the Broward Sheriff Office in the Human Resources Division. He was a major. So all of a sudden, they come to me, Mr. Ted, and I don't want you to take my word, but I can show you where my attorney, Bruce Little, you know, they sent me a letter, proposal for settlement, if you can see it.
Proposal for settlement, meaning that they're admitting that they're guilty.
Yes, and they wanted to offer me and my family $50,000 to resolve my case. I told them, I said, you done lost your mind, man. I said, $50,000, what is that going to do for me and my family when we've lost our home, cars, finances? My wife went through her retirement. I said, you know, I was locked up for almost 2 years, faced with natural life imprisonment. I said, no, man, listen, no, absolutely not. And I told him, I said, I'm ready to go to trial. So we went to mediation. So when we went to mediation, they asked me how much was I seeking. I told them 2.69. So the counsel for the sheriff, Mike Piper, said, oh, well, we're not, and the risk manager from the Broward Sheriff Office, we're not going to even come close to that. The most that we would give you is $100,000. So I told my attorney, I said, so why are you sitting here? Why are we sitting here? I said, we need to get up and go, man. So, of course, finally we get a chance to go to trial, which is what me and my family wanted. And when we go to trial, they chose an all-white jury. And by this time, I'm working with the United States Department of Homeland Security through a subcontractor. Mr. Ted, people would tell you that I never worked for the Department of Homeland Security, which is a lie. And I have the documents right here to show. These documents right here. Department of Homeland Security, ICE contractor. As a matter of fact, I became a lieutenant. This document right here, it says that I was a lieutenant with DHS.
How long were you with them?
I was actually with them from 2008 to 2012.
For 4 years, okay.
And so to be honest with you, so finally we get to trial, and while we're there, my wife and kids came and testified. Every juror that sit on that bench was crying as they listened to the testimony. They had my former bosses come in and testify on my behalf. They had my family. They had people from the community. And they had a counselor by the name of Mr. Stephen McCann from the Federal Detention Center. And he came to testify in reference to me being a model inmate while I was there incarcerated, and I had no blemishes at all. So, all of a sudden, they wondered, how is it that that judge who was presiding over my civil case, right? How did he get there? He said there was a Supreme Court.
There's a conflict of interest. There's a conflict of interest.
So, but that first judge recused himself. He recused himself and dismissed himself from the case. So then they went and got another judge. He said he was a retired county court judge out of Dade County. And so he came in and he said there was a Supreme Court order allowing him to try the case. Well, during the course of trial, when the testimony began, were proffered to the court by my wife, my kids, people in the community, my former bosses, my counselor, and they found out that I never did anything wrong. Would you believe, Mr. Ted, that every man or woman that was associated with my case, who arrested me, they were asked in court, did you testify in Mr. Hicks' criminal proceeding? You know what all of them said? They didn't recall. They don't remember. All of them kept saying, I don't recall. I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't remember. And he said, so you mean to tell me that none of you guys remember the incident that happened with Mr. Hicks on June 15, 2000, where he was arrested at his home? And no, I don't recall. I don't remember. So anyway, when the counsel for the sheriff saw the jurors crying, he told the judge, he says, Your Honor, I'm asking for a recess. And my attorney gave closing arguments. It was on a Friday evening. I'll never forget it. And the judge said, well, we're going to grant the recess and we'll convene on Monday morning. Well, Mr. Ted, when the judge came back that Monday morning, he said, before I bring the jury out, I want to rule in this case. And he said, let's go on record. He said that he received a certified package to his home from the via FedEx from the defense counsel. So I'm looking at my lawyer and I'm saying to him, I said, but wait a minute, what is the judge talking about? I said, did you know about this? He said, no, I didn't know anything about it. I said, so how could Mike Piper send anything to the judge's home, without your authorization? I said, that's ex parte communication.
That's right. That's right.
I said, he can't do that. So he says, Ray, just listen to what he has to say. I said, man, what you mean, listen? But Mr. Ted, my lawyer and I will always get into arguments, and to be honest with you, I didn't know any better back then because I was told that he was a great lawyer, so to be honest with you, I didn't know. Only thing I did was trust the people who sent him to me, but I realized he was a former cop for the city of Fort Lauderdale PD. So it's really to be honest with you, the reason why they gave me this guy is to do exactly what they did to me and my family. So all of a sudden, the judge, he said, well, I'm not going to bring the jury out. And he gave a directed verdict and kicked me and my family out of court.
So in other words, what? You let the judge know that he wasn't supposed to be on your case.
He was not supposed to be on the case. And watch this. So what I did, Mr. Ted, is I wrote the bar. I wrote the Florida bar a thorough complaint against this lawyer. And because of the complaint that I wrote, and it was so thorough and well written, that the bar gave him 10 days to respond to my complaint. And when he responded, when Mike Piper had to respond to the complaint, my attorney wrote up a motion, and it was titled Relief from Judgment, basically saying that that judge who presided over my case, there was never no Supreme Court order done. He was actually, he was planted there by the general counsel from the Broward Sheriff Office. And how I know that, Mr. Ted, is because there was an email that they sent Mr. Little, and he gave it to me. And the email said that they was trying to vest Judge Breger. So what I did is this. So I went and got an appellate lawyer. Her name was Nancy Hoffman Little. And she wrote up a thorough, when I tell you she did a powerful brief, she made mention of everything I'm conveying to you right now. And they held on, the 4th DCA held on to the case for about 1.5 years. And they came back with a per curiam without merit, meaning that they ruled in the case without any written explanation. How is it that they came to that conclusion? So to be honest with you, so the two almost 6.5 months of incarceration, the 3 arrests, because I didn't get a chance to explain to you, Mr. Ted, because I went into the court procedure, but the Broward Sheriff Office stormed my home a 3rd time on October 10th. Yes.
A 3rd time?
A 3rd time. On October 10th of 2005, right after I won the African American Achievers Award, where I helped 25 kids get their high school diploma GED. I helped my mother and my brother at the age of 55 and 32. The Broward Sheriff Office stormed my home a 3rd time at gunpoint. And this time, all my kids, my oldest daughter, when I was first arrested, she was 12. My youngest daughter was 7. And my son was 4 years of age. The 3rd time they came to my home, they was looking to kill me. And when the sergeant, there was a Caucasian sergeant out of Oakland Park, but he came with a gentleman who knew me. His name was Robert Crumb. And when they came to the house, he had his hand on the trigger as he eagerly waited for the right opportunity for me to make the wrong move. And they drugged me out of my house, handcuffed me and shackled me, And I said, what is this about? We got a warrant for your arrest. I said, for what? Well, we can't, here we go again. We can't discuss it. I said, what do you mean you can't discuss it, man? So what I did is I picked my phone up. I said, I'm gonna call my lawyer. So I called my lawyer. And I said, man, listen, man, these people have stormed my home again at gunpoint in front of my family, handcuffing me, dragging me out of my house, shackling me for something what I've done nothing. So he says, Ray, let them do whatever they're going to do. We'll do what we have to do. So, of course, Crumb got into an argument with the sergeant because they were trying to put cuffs on me, but I couldn't get my hands in back of me. So he said, man, Ray going to need a double set of cuffs. So the sergeant said, F that. Put the effing cuffs on him like I told you to. And he said, man, he can't get his hand behind his back. So I said, listen, Crumb, you don't have to argue with the sergeant, man. I managed to get my hand behind my back. You know, he said, no, Ray, no, man, it ain't going down like that. So eventually the sergeant put the 2 cuffs on me, and then he put shackles on me. I said, what's the purpose of the shackles? He said, Ray, you're a big guy. We don't want any problem. I said, well, I said, Sarge, I said, if it was going to be a problem, it would have been a problem a long time ago. I said, but you got a job to do. So I get downtown. When I arrived to the booking, they had 20 guys there. When I get the booking, they had 20 guys there in the salad port with gloves on, waiting on me to come. So one of the deputies by the name of Richard Lee, who I helped get on with the Broward Sheriff Office, he was working booking. So when I arrived there, I was talking to a young lady who I went through the Crossover Academy with. Her name was Figueroa. And I was calm. I was not erratic or irate or belligerent. And so I asked him, I said, Lee, what did they arrest me for? Because they haven't told me what they arrested me for. He said that he got the call, well, booking got the call that I was violent. And he said that he wanted to stay there to make sure that I was not violent because we was close friends. And of course, he says, Ray, they arrest you for child abuse. I said, child abuse? I said, man, you got to be kidding me, man. I said, what child have I abused? He said, what's strange about this is that on the PC, the probable cause affidavit, there is no victim. It was all orchestrated by the Broward Sheriff Office, Ricky Clark, who worked in the Child Protection Services. So the prosecutor did a thorough investigation. She threw the case out, no prosecution, Mr. Victor. And I reached out to everybody. I reached out to the mayor. I reached out to the vice mayor. I reached out to the congressman, the state representative, the state senator. I reached out to everybody possible, you know, trying to bring awareness about the situation that me and my family went through. And to this day, I have never been afforded opportunity. And that's why I want to say to you, Mr. Ted, man, I love you. I thank God for you. I thank God for the Broward Social Network for affording me an opportunity to address these concerns that me and my family have dealt with for over 20 years now. And this is the only time that I've gotten a chance to even talk about it. I reached out to every investigator locally. I reached out to Mr. Bob Norman, Mr. Jim DeFeedy, Mr. Jay Ducassi, Ms. Brenda Wallman. I reached out to all these people. But now when you pull my name up, they make it seem like I'm some nasty person. When in fact that me and my family, we're the victim here. So as a man, as a husband and a father, you know, I've done everything within my power, you know, to take care of my family, to keep pushing forward, you know, to bring awareness of this situation. You know, there came a time that my oldest daughter, she said that she had to fight against individuals at school because they said that, you know, oh, I see how you guys own that house. The house cost us $113,000. Oh, I see how you guys own that Mercedes. The car cost me $37,000. And, you know, but I can tell you this. I told my wife and my kids, I said, listen, if you want to make me proud, you know, and God proud, go to school, get a good education, believe in yourself, and become an example for others. Well, I can tell you that both of my daughters are school teachers right now. My oldest daughter graduated from BCC in the top 10% of her class, okay, with honors. She graduated from FAU with a 4.0 GPA. She graduated, that was with her bachelor's degree. She graduated from Nova Southeast with a master's degree with honors. She's going to get a doctorate degree right now at Nova Southeast University. My youngest daughter, she graduated from Florida A&M with honors, with a 3-point-something GPA. My son, he graduated from Plantation High School with honors. So it's just amazing to me how, we've been dragged through the mud, man, for no apparent reason, and nobody seemed to want to do anything about it. Scott Israel told me last year, Ray, before that incident occurred with him, Ray, I did a thorough investigation, found out that you never committed these crimes. Every man or woman that was associated with your case should be arrested. And I said, well, Scott, how come you don't reach out to FDLE and initiate an investigation? He said, I was not the sheriff during this time. I said, well, you're the sheriff now. To be honest with you, Mr. Ted, I've been a Democrat all my life. And I went to all these politicians, that are Democrat and asked them, you'll be amazed if these people are actually in bed with other individuals and they refuse to make certain decisions pertaining to what they see that happen. So at the end of the day, I look up and I thank God each and every day for what he's doing in my life, what he has done. And just to show you, on October 6th of 03, the Broward Sheriff Office had to give me my years of service, which in fact, Mr. Ted, they only paid me my retirement, 13.14 years of service. But according to this document that's signed by the same sheriff who had me arrested, Ken Jennings, you can see right here where I had 15 years on the force before the incident occurred. So I've been protesting that as well, for them to give me my full retirement. At this time, they refused to do it. But here is a document from the Broward Sheriff Office where they had to change my separation date from June 15th of 2000 to October 6th of 03, which gave me my certification in correction. But they said I had to go back through the 48 hours of the equivalency course for the crossover academy and take the state board over again. To be honest with you, they took something from me that I love. And, anyone that knows me, I'll tell you, I stand for what's right, Mr. Ted. And one of the reasons why I opted to run for sheriff of Broward County is not only to belittle, degrade people. I've shaken the hands of an individual that literally tried to take my life from me, Keith Neely. I shook his hand and told him that I love him, And this was right after Scott won the second time we was at Ira Goldberg home. I shook his hand and told him that I love him. And he literally tried to take my life from me. And you know what's amazing, Mr. Ted? The Broward Sheriff Office never called me down to internal affairs to give me the Garrity statement. They never checked to see if I was going to these various states. They never checked to see if it was my voice on the audio tape. They just showed up in my home and took me into custody because they had arrested this guy named Ansel Pratt, who was an informant for them after he got in trouble. So he gets in trouble for chasing a man down the street. His name is Mr. Eddie Frazier. Don't take my word. Ask Mr. Frazier what happened with him and Ansel Pratt. The man went there to pick up his money for dumping his trash, and he chased the man down the street with a gun. And he was arrested for aggravated assault with a firearm. And the Broward Sheriff Office listened to this guy lie on me, to say that I committed all these crimes, when in fact that I've done nothing wrong. And not only that, Mr. Ted, I called the Internal Affairs on July 16th, and I asked them for a copy of the investigative file. They never did. They never conducted an investigation. They said, Mr. Hicks, per your request, all your files have been destroyed.
So let me ask you a question now, Mr. Hicks, and I can talk to you for a while. Is there somewhere in you, because I have my thoughts in listening to you, and I'm really baffled about your story. Is there somewhere in you that still believes in justice?
Absolutely, there's justice. And the reason why there's justice, Mr. Ted, is because of the fact that I'm sitting here today speaking to you, and I'm showing you that there is justice. Because if it was not for justice, I would not be sitting here. I would probably be locked up for the rest of my life, for something,
or worse,
for crimes I
or
never
worse,
committed,
or worse. You could
or
probably
even
be,
worse.
or probably be like George Floyd, unfortunately. God forbid.
And see, and that's the thing, Mr. Ted. So you ask yourself, and you see, this is the problem, that I see. And someone asked me the other day, how did I feel about the situation that happened in Minneapolis? I said, first of all, we as officers, we're supposed to set the tone and the precedent for the people. We're supposed to be the salt of the earth. It's their tax money that keeps us with a job. And furthermore, it don't start from the bottom up. It starts from the top down. So if the top is not doing what they're supposed to do, then the bottom definitely not going to do what they're supposed to do if they're not governed. And to be honest with you, it's a no-win situation for Mr. George Floyd, as well as the cops that was involved in this situation. And the reason why I say that, Mr. Ted, is because Mr. George Floyd, his family would never see him again. And it's a shame that if he did something, if he did something wrong, the man was already handcuffed. He was already subdued. There was no reason for putting his knee on his neck like that.
Absolutely.
Anybody knows that when you take and you cut off the carotid artery, it's gonna stop the
blood flow to the brain.
Oxygen to the brain.
Right.
So anyway, and the other three officers that were standing there, that watched this incident take place, now they have been implicated and charged with aiding and abetting. So now their family is going to suffer too. So this officer who did that, he's suffering now. He's suffering now because of the fact that his wife just divorced him. They don't place him on suicide watch. He lost his job, lost his pension. He lost everything, man. So you ask yourself, was it warranted? But Mr. Ted, if it was me, if I was there in that particular situation, I would have pulled him up off that guy. And I'd have told him, listen, man, I got it. I got it from here. He would have been mad at me, but he'd have thanked me later because of the fact that I saved his job. He may have gotten like 5 or 10 days on the beach, but I'd rather have 5 or 10 days on the beach than for me to lose my entire, job, home, cars, wife, and everything else, man. It's just wasn't warranted.
2 out of the 4 officers, they were on their 4th day on the job, only on the 4th day of the job. So they were just simply following orders. 2 out of the 4 officers were simply following orders because of lack of experience. I mean, there is what's supposed to be common sense, whereby you're supposed to be able to say, well, this is wrong. However, it's actually in the manual of Minneapolis in order to be able to restrain individuals by putting the knee on the neck. And I am actually asking whoever can hear my voice, the hundreds and the thousands of people who will see this video, that should not be part of the policy in any police department, anywhere, in any country, in any state.
I've never even heard of any such thing, Mr. Ted. When you go through defensive tactics, they don't teach you to put your knee on nobody's neck. I mean, can you imagine you putting a knee on somebody's neck, with the amount of weight and pressure that you're putting? I mean, there's a possibility that person may go paralyzed. You know what I mean? I mean, look what happened to Mr. George Floyd. It cost him his life, man. So to be honest with you, I've never even heard of any such policy. I never heard of it, and I've been doing law enforcement from the age of 21 years of age, and I'm 54 now. And I ain't never put my knee on nobody's forehead or neck or back or anything of that nature. And they know better than that because you can injure that person.
Right. So let's get back to your case. At this point, today is June the 8th, 2020.
Yes, sir.
Do you, by any fathom of the imagination, know why you were arrested the first time, why you were sought after the first time? Why? Do you know why? Have you gotten at least to the point where you can actually understand? You probably said something to somebody, you probably gave something to somebody. I'm just asking, why did this happen? Because when things happen to me, I always ask myself, I try to put myself in the other shoe. Why would this person think that? Why would this person say that?
Well, the only thing I can come up with, Mr. Chad, is because I spoke out against police brutality corruption, plant drugs on black offenders, and beating black offenders to the ground. And as a result of it, it landed me at the federal detention center. Because the thing about it, there's a code of silence in law enforcement. There's a blue code of silence. Whatever happens, law enforcement stays there. And if you go against the grain, it can become detrimental. But the thing about it, Mr. Ted, is this right here. I think that most of these departments, man, need to implement something that the Department of Homeland Security has, which is progressive discipline. If a person has a problem, you call that individual in and you sit down and talk to them. Hey, listen, man, is there anything going on at home? What caused you to do this? Why did you make this decision? So at the end of the day, you start out with a counsel report. You start out with a written reprimand. You don't just start out with, termination, because you got to have some form of progressive discipline in place in order for these people to identify their reasoning for make a mistake.
Right.
But if you got the top administrators who condone this type of behavior, then you can only accept the fact that the subordinates are going to go out and do things that he or she should not do.
Right. One of the other reasons why I wanted to do this conversation with you, and timing is everything, because we could have done this earlier. Now we have this information, this conversation at the forefront of everybody's minds in America, is that there are probably many more George Floyds that we don't even know about, right? For example, people who are getting abused by the police, and there are no telephones. There are no telephones. The only reason we are here is because a 15-year-old girl, a child, recorded that, who is going to be probably disturbed for the rest of her life, witnessing the death of someone. So there are George Floyds that we don't even know about. There are George Floyds that we have not even heard about. There are Aubreys that we have not. There are Rodney Kings that we've never heard about. And all of this is because of the technology that's putting some light on these situations. And how is it that we can get to the point whereby justice is actually afforded to every American, every person living in this country, every resident of the United States, and possibly all over the world? Or should we unfortunately accept that there will always be corruption?
Oh, absolutely not. We cannot accept the fact that it's going to always be corruption. What we need to do is put people in places who are going to make certain decisions and lead by example. As I said before, you have different types of leaders. You have an autocrat leader, a Democrat leader, and a free reign leader. An autocrat leader is a dictator. He or she tell you when, what to do, where to do it, how to do it, and a Democrat leader look for a smooth transition between him and his subordinates. And a free reign leader is a person that gives you free reign to do whatever you want to do. That is not me. I'm a Democrat leader. I look for a smooth transition between me and my subordinates. So if these people are the ones that's out there, that's patrolling each and every day to make a difference out of society, that the taxpayers' money paid to keep them with the job, therefore, you need to respect these people as such. But the fact of the matter is that some of our top administrators don't get involved in these type of situations. And that's the reason why these things keep happening, Mr. Ted. So until we put the right people in place who are going to stop this nonsense, and hold these people accountable for what they do that's wrong, and congratulate them for what they do that's right, it's going to continue. But I believe, I'm very optimistic, that God holds the future in everybody's hands who's going to be making certain decisions. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running for sheriff of Broward County, to bring an awareness of these type of situations and to make sure that these things don't happen to other people that happen to me and my wife and kids. Because, Mr. Ted, not everybody can go through the situation what I've described to you and still be talking about it to this day. But at the end of the day, God has given me the fortitude and the ability and the strength to keep pushing forward, to be an example to others. I could care less about power, prestige. I care about people. And I want to make a difference in the lives of other people. When I talked to the Hispanic Party just the other day, you should have seen them. Almost every last one of them was almost in tears as they listened to me speak about the same thing I'm talking to you about right now on the Broward Social Network. And Mr. Ted, I'm telling you, I thank God for this platform, because how is it that the media can say all these nasty and harsh things about me to cover this thing up and throw it under the rug? And that's another thing. The media put out whatever they want to put out, but people, they feed off of negativity and it sells. But what about positivity? I mean, I've been positive with this situation ever since they did this to me. And I just think it's unfortunate how I would have had 33 years on the force right now, Mr. Ted, if they had not did what they did to me. You can ask my boss right now that I work for, a security company, and they'll tell you what type of individual I am. They're going to tell you that I'm one of the best. They've already told me this before. It's because of who I am and what I do. And that's a shame. It's a shame that they could take something from me that I love, because 95% of the people in my family, Mr. Ted, has been in and out of trouble. And I, as a young kid, I always said, man, I want to go become an officer to make a difference in the lives of others. Now, you don't have to take my word, Mr. Ted. I get a young man by the name of Gaston Akins. We call him G Fresh from the community. And he would tell you, because I inspired him, he has not been in trouble in almost 35 years. And now he's the superintendent of a construction site that are hiring other individuals who may go through the system. And not only that, Mr. Ted, he even gave me a job when I came home as a laborer. So you got to be careful. You know, you have to be careful how you treat people on your way up, because you're going to meet them on your way down.
All the time. So I have a question for you. So let's just say that you are elected as sheriff of Broward County in 2020. How do you walk in with animosity? How are you going to work with the people who actually were part of your experience?
Well, first and foremost, I want to embrace every last one of them, Mr. Ted. I want to embrace them. I would never go into a situation, because again, if I'm a leader, what I'm telling you about leaders, if you're going to lead, you got to lead by example. I would never go into any office with an attitude or retaliation against these individuals, because guess what? It doesn't say much about me as a leader. But I will pull them aside and I will talk to them and say, listen, I want you to understand something. What you did to me and my wife and my kids, it was unacceptable. But I want you to change your ways of doing things and make sure, because you got a family yourself that you got to take care of. So a lot of times, and that's why I say to you, Mr. Ted, you don't have to take my word. Get Keith Neely on the phone and he'll tell you that I shook his hand and told him that I love him.
Okay, so what would be your closing message? Because based on the fact that you really didn't have a problem with law enforcement before, one of the many reasons why I'm uncomfortable with this conversation is that it seems as though even if you walk a straight line, you could still end up in trouble. And I'm not comfortable with that, because I do believe that if you do right, you'll be right. But it seems as though that even if you do right, you can wind up being in a situation like yours. What would be your closing message?
Thing about it, Mr.
What
Ted,
would be your closing message?
You listen, you have to do the right thing. And I remember when I was 7 years of age, my mom had some coconut bar cookies in a jar. And she said, son, do not go in this jar unless I give you permission. And of course, my other siblings, my mom worked 2 jobs. She worked as a migrant worker. She cleaned people's homes and stuff. And it was difficult for us, growing up in poverty. But anyway, my mom went to work and I went in the jar. And I ate some cookies. And unbeknown to me, she counted the cookies. And she said, who ate the cookies? I said, I don't know. I lied to her. She said, who ate the cookies? I said, I don't know. So she asked my brother and sister, make a long story short, she said, okay, go get the extension cord. So I went and got the extension cord, and she said, I'm asking you again. I said, Mom, I ate the cookies. She said, why did you lie to me? I said, because I thought you was going to beat me. She said, son, no. She said, I'm still going to beat you. I'm not going to beat you because you ate the cookies, but I'm going to beat you because you lied to me. So I said that to say this, Mr. Ted. People do things in a way that we don't understand sometime in life. And the fact of the matter is that it goes back to Joseph, how Joseph's brother became so envious and jealous of him in the book of Genesis. And his father Jacob was also telling him, boy, go sit down somewhere. But God gave him a vision where he can interpret dreams. And in the process, his brother sold him to Pharaoh as a slave. And Pharaoh's wife found him appealing. And she tried to entice him to sleep with her. And he said, no, I refuse to sleep with my master's wife. But anyway, she tore a piece of his garment and they threw him in prison. And Joseph was there for about 12 years. But God began to use him. He began to use him to interpret the dream and for the butler and the baker. And as a result of it, by him interpreting the dreams, he became the king over Egypt. And them same brothers who sold him, who wanted to kill him because they were jealous of him, he was able to feed every last one of them. So my statement is this, Mr. Ted. I don't have any ill feelings towards anybody. And as a matter of fact, I'm letting God lead me and guide me in the direction that he sees fit. And I will continue to be an example for the people to let them know that, hey, no matter what you go through in life, whether the trials or tribulation become so prevalent in your life, but identify self, put God first, believe in who you are, and move forward and continue to make a difference. So that same Raymond Lamar Hicks, but I've learned, Mr. Ted, and I'll be honest with you, I had to put away my temper. I had a temper like my dad at one point, but I had to put that aside and see the direction that God is leading me in. So to be honest with you, I don't have no ill feelings for any of those individuals. And as a matter of fact, I would embrace all of them just like I did with Keith Neely, because I think that's what God would want me to do. So if you're going to lead, you need to lead by example. So I'm telling everybody out there, I'm a candidate running for sheriff of Broward County. I have over 30-some years in law enforcement and security experience. Of course, I have my bachelor's, I have my doctorate degree, and I'm a people person. I love and respect people. As I said before, Mr. Ted, I love you, man. There's nothing you can do about it. I thank God for the Broward Social Network for affording me an opportunity to talk about these issues that me and my family has gone through for over 20 years now.
Question for you. I respect education. I expect education. What did you study? You said that you went to a college and you have your doctorate. What did you study?
I got my doctorate degree in theology. Okay. From Harper's Reaper School of Ministry.
Yeah, because you're going to need a lot of prayer on this path, brother. You're going to need a lot of prayer.
but prayer is pervades much, though, Mr. Ted. And you got to understand something. When the people believe in you and they know who you are, and your name is a brand, and people come to realization to understand that it's not about me, but it's about all of us collectively. And the fact of the matter is that that's what law enforcement is supposed to be about. You got a lot of great men and women that wear the uniform, Mr. Ted, that put their lives on the line each and every day to make people safe. And my mother always said to me, if you take one good apple, and you put them in the midst of bad apples, eventually they become bad apples. So to be honest with you, that's why I say that you got to have progressive discipline in these departments. You got to sit down and talk to these individuals and find out what's going on in their lives, because they may be stressing too. They may be up under pressure. A lot of people don't know there's a lot of law enforcement officials that be drinking. They say things they shouldn't say. They do things they shouldn't do, and they're human too. So a lot of times, these people may need some type of counseling from top administrators, not somebody who's just going to say, "Oh, he did wrong, get him out of here," because that doesn't help the situation. Right. So to be honest with you, again, I'm not running because I got any personal vendetta against anybody, Mr. Ted, because I don't. I can't tell you that when it first happened to me, I was angry, I was upset, I was confused.
Understandably.
I was frustrated, but now, man, I done seen the manifestation of Christ. And Christ himself went through a situation, so who am I?
Is this the first time you're running for office?
No, sir. As a matter of fact, I ran for state representative, District 92 in 2016.
Okay.
And I was going to win that race.
And what happened?
I was actually speaking at the Pat Larkin facility in Pompano. And my constituent, Whitney Rawls, he didn't have a voice. his voice was spoken through former Sheriff Ken Jennings. So when I began to show the picture of him and Sheriff Ken Jennings together, hugging each other, they found a way to disqualify me. They said I didn't have enough money in my campaign account. The fee was $1781.82. I had over $7,000 in my account. So make a long story short, they first sent me information saying I was qualified. Then they turned around and said I was disqualified. So, they said my check didn't go through. And so what I did is I supported Patricia Williams. She's now the state representative, District 92. And I reached out to her on numerous occasions. She said that she was going to, support me in reference to some of the things that I do. I will admit that she has supported me when I help out with the kids. I always do a back-to-school extravaganza for the young kids in the community, where we give away book bags and school material. But other than that, I've been seeing or heard anything from her. But at the end of the day, Mr. Ted, that's why I say, man, some of these individuals take on these positions, man, for the wrong reasons. And I'm not taking on this position to belittle, degrade anybody, Mr. Ted. And I said live, my job is to help motivate people, to inspire them, to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community, And we were a family at the Broward Sheriff Office. Anybody that know, back in the days, man, we were a family. There was so much camaraderie. We did a lot of great things. We had the Pig Bowl. We used to go to the Police Olympics. We did so many great things, so many fun things. And I think that's what needs to be implemented back into the Broward Sheriff Office. And I say this and shut up, a lot of these people who get power, Mr. Ted, as you can see here lately, they use their power to belittle, degrade people. That says nothing about leadership. You can't just, because you're the top boss, you just can't say, hey man, I'm gonna fire this person, I'm gonna do this to this person. And it just doesn't make sense to me, but
well,
anyway, I would do the best that I can,
There are about 10 of you. Is today qualification to the qualifying date?
Yes, sir. The qualifying date is actually from June 8th up until the June 12th, June 12th at noon.
Okay, so there are about 10 of you so far. I don't know how that will change after the qualifying date. I wish everybody equally. I have not endorsed anyone in the sheriff's race. I wish everybody equally good luck. However, if you hypothetically, right, God decides that, somebody else is going to make it through the primary, who would you support in the general? And you're welcome to not answer.
Well, to be honest with you, I really don't know at this point, Mr. Victor, because, so many of these individuals have lied to me, so many people have promised me all kind of things, They've said to me that, Ray, we're going to do this for you. We're going to do that for you, and what I failed to do is get it in writing. I failed to have him put it in writing, Mr. Ted, because, I trust the person, I love the person. To this day, I still love him, but I just think it's unfortunate how, here it is. And I was told that they was afraid of bringing me to the sheriff department, which they should have given me my job back after I was exonerated, Mr. Victor, but they didn't do that. They were supposed to reinstate me and gave me everything back, but they didn't do it. They just continuously they kept harassing me. But at this particular time, I don't know, Mr. Ted. If I don't make it past the primary, I don't know if I would, give them any of these guys my endorsement, because one thing is for sure, man, I'm tired of the game, Mr. Ted. People are losing their lives, man. Families are suffering at the hands of these individuals who's supposed to be making the decision, man. And I cannot play the game. I cannot play that kind of game because I know what me and my wife and kids have experienced and what we went through. And I'm telling you, it's not easy, Mr. Ted, to go through the situation that I've gone through. Can you imagine if someone stormed your home right now and slam you on your face in front of your wife and kids and tell your kids get the F back and tell your wife get the F back, and they take you away, take you from liberty, from your family, and you there trying to, put pieces together, to keep your family together, It's not an easy. Listen, anybody that walk in my shoes, listen, I implore them to do that. But I hope and pray that they got a relationship with the Lord. So at the end of the day, man, from what I've seen, some people's got to change, Mr. Ted. That's all I can tell you. Some of these individuals that's running for these positions, they need to change, man. And if they can't change, I'm definitely not going to get out there and support them, man. Because my word is my bond. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I tell you that I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it.
Well, on that note, Mr. Raymond Hicks, I'm not necessarily sure why God chose you to be the voice, to be against police corruption, to be against police brutality. Maybe it's because he knew that you would be able to survive it because of that old saying that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. I do believe that you're absolutely correct. Not everybody would be able to go through. I'm not sure I'd be able to survive what you went through. And I commend you for being courageous to speak up. I commend you for being a man of your word. I commend you for being strong, for being still committed to your wife and children. And I still say, and this is public, it's on the record, hundreds and thousands of people will see this video. You are a role model to humanity. You are a role model to me. You are a gift to humanity. And I thank you so very, very much for your courage.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ted, man. Just want to tell you I love you. I truly thank God for you. I've been crying out for 20 years now, asking God to afford me an opportunity to address these concerns that me and my family have had over 20 years. And now here it is, 20 years. And it's amazing that look at the world today and what's going on, As a matter of fact, if you notice, you got a lot of great men and women that wear the uniform, Mr. Ted. And I was one of them. I was one of the sharpest individuals that you would ever want to see in a uniform. And anyone that knows me will tell you that, I was that kind of person. And I say this and I shut up, Mr. Ted. Look at the situation that happened at Fort Lauderdale PD, where the black female, she stood up and she said something, and the fact of the matter is because of the fact that she said something, because number one, she protected him and she protected the victim. And that's what I'm saying. That's what law enforcement is supposed to be about, not sit back and just watch these things unfold and not do anything about it. So at the end of the day, you got a lot of great men that wear the uniform, that's putting their lives on the line each and every day. I love law enforcement. To this day, I love it, and I've always said to my kids, be respectful of the law. And I'm doing everything within my power to go back into law enforcement and to continue to be an example for other people, because that's what it's about. And inspire our young kids, men and women, and say, hey, listen, I don't care where you come from. I want to tell you that I love you. I want to embrace you. How can I help you? Because there was a white man that did it for me. So I look up and I thank God each and every day, Mr. Victor. And at the end of the day, man, God is doing some amazing things. I tell you, man, it took me a long time to get to where I'm at right now. I tell you, but my mom said it best. She said, until you let go of that old Raymond Hicks, she said, God cannot use you. And what she meant by that, and let me just clarify, is I used to have a temper like out of this world. I would fight with anybody, Mr. Ted. And I was raised up fighting, but I've learned that sometimes the battles are not yours. You got to give it to somebody else. So that's what I've done. I've given my battles over to the Lord. So I tell you, as a brother that love you, Mr. Ted, it was God that touched your heart, that allowed you an opportunity to be able to converse with me about this particular situation. Look what's going on in the world today. All over the world, people are, lashing out at law enforcement because of what? This guy made a wrong decision, and look what happened. It's an embarrassment to him, his family, and the department that he worked for. So at the end of the day, only thing I can do, Mr. Ted, is do the best that I can. Let God continue to lead me, and we'll see what the Lord has in store.
Mr. Hicks, thank you so much for being a gift to humanity. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure there are many other stories out there, and we have not been able to hear and benefit from them. So therefore, I'm going to close this out by saying, sir, you are a true hero for our community. I thank you so very much. My name is Ted Victor. I'm going to sign out from the Broward Social Network. Today is June the 8th on Monday at approximately 4:20 in the afternoon. we are actually advocating for the end of police brutality. We are advocating for the end of corruption. We are advocating that all human beings, white, blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asians, come together and create a civil society in this wonderful social experiment called the United States of America, where everyone is treated fairly and equally. And therefore, I am holding up to those standards. That is the message I will share with my children. I will share with my students. And I would just basically want everybody to be treated fairly. And I would never, ever want anybody to go through what you've been through. I would never want to see another George Floyd, even though there probably have been some already. And we actually have to fight towards that. And Mr. Raymond Hicks, God bless you. God bless your family. And I thank you so very much. And when I see you personally, I owe you a whole lot of hugs. And in the meantime, I'm going to settle for a digital high five. So I thank you so very much. God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Ted. All right, take care.